Let me tell you something that your spirit already suspects, a truth that lives beneath your fears. Walk with me for a few moments, and you will feel it unfold inside you. You have noticed them, haven't you? Those moments when the universe seems to whisper your name. A thought arrives, and within hours, someone speaks those exact words. A question burns in your heart, and the next book you open answers it on the first page. A soul crosses your path precisely when you needed their presence most. You call them coincidences because you were taught that the world is random, that meaning is something you must create, rather than something that flows toward you like water finding its level. But deep inside, in that quiet chamber where your truth lives, you have always known better. You have always sensed that these moments are not accidents, but a language, a sacred alphabet written in the fabric of existence itself, waiting for those with eyes softened enough to read it. There is an ache in you that the modern world cannot name. You walk through days that feel scripted by others, performing roles that fit you like borrowed clothes. And yet, every so often, reality breaks open and shows you something that makes your breath catch. A number repeats itself until you can no longer ignore it. A dream deposits you in a place you visit 3 days later. Someone speaks a sentence that sounds like it was lifted directly from your unspoken prayers. A song plays at the exact moment you were thinking of someone you haven't seen in years, and later that day, they reach out to you. You find a feather on your path just as you were asking for guidance. The clock reads the same numbers every time you look, as if time itself is trying to get your attention. And for a moment, just a moment, the machinery of the ordinary world stops turning, and you glimpse something vast and intelligent moving beneath the surface of things. But then the moment passes, and doubt rushes in like floodwater. You tell yourself you are seeing patterns where none exist, that your mind is playing tricks, that meaning is a desperate human invention projected onto an indifferent cosmos. This is what you were taught. This is the inheritance of a world that worships only what can be measured and controlled. Yet the synchronicities continue. They arrive unbidden, unscheduled, uncontrolled. They do not ask for your belief. They simply occur, patient as the turning of seasons, persistent as roots seeking water through stone. And perhaps this is the first truth you must receive, that synchronicities are not sent to convince you of anything, but to remind you of what you have forgotten. You are not separate from the universe observing it from outside. You are the universe observing itself, experiencing itself, speaking to itself through the poetry of connection and correspondence. When a synchronicity occurs, it is not the cosmos reaching down to tap you on the shoulder. It is your own deeper self, the part of you that exists beyond the boundaries of your skin, communicating in the only language that can bridge the chasm between the visible and invisible worlds. You are both the message and the messenger, both the question and the answer, moving through a reality so responsive that your very attention reshapes it. Listen carefully now, for this changes everything. You have been taught to divide existence into inner and outer, subjective and objective, mind and matter, as if these were separate kingdoms ruled by different laws. But the soul knows no such division. The soul moves in a realm where thought and thing, intention and event are woven from the same thread, spun on the same cosmic loom. When you truly desire something, when you align yourself with a truth that resonates in the deepest chambers of your being, you do not simply think about that truth. You become a tuning fork vibrating at its frequency, and the universe, being nothing more and nothing less than an infinite field of possibility, an ocean of potential waiting to take form, begins to arrange itself in patterns that echo your vibration. This is not magic in the way you were taught to dismiss it. This is the fundamental nature of a reality far more responsive, far more alive, far more intimate than you were permitted to believe. You are not lost. You are simply becoming too vast for your old life. The synchronicities you experience are not random validations, but precise communications from the intelligence that moves through all things. Every seeming coincidence is a thread in a tapestry you cannot yet see in full, but which your soul recognizes the way a child recognizes the voice of home calling them back for dinner after a long day of play. You ask what synchronicities mean, desperately searching for the code that will unlock their message, but you are asking the wrong question. Synchronicities do not mean in the way words mean. They reveal in the way dawn reveals the landscape that was hidden in darkness. They part the curtain between what you think is real and what is actually real, showing you for just an instant that you live in a universe saturated with meaning, drenched in purpose, alive with an awareness that knows you more intimately than you know yourself. The meaning is not in the synchronicity itself, but in what it awakens in you, what it calls forth from the depths of your remembering. There are those who will tell you that synchronicities are merely the brain's pattern-seeking mechanism, an evolutionary accident that helped your ancestors survive by seeing faces in clouds and predators in shadows, but which now misleads you into seeing significance where none exists. They will speak with great authority about confirmation bias and selective memory, about statistical probability and the law of large numbers, about how the human mind is wired to create narratives from chaos. And they are not entirely wrong. The mind does seek patterns. The heart does hunger for meaning. The soul does long for connection. But what these explanations miss, what they cannot touch because they operate from a paradigm too small to contain it, is this: the fact that you can explain something mechanistically does not make it any less sacred. The fact that your brain lights up in certain ways when you experience a synchronicity does not mean the synchronicity is only in your brain. Perhaps your brain is the instrument through which a larger consciousness plays itself. Perhaps what they call the pattern-seeking mechanism is actually the soul's antenna, tuned to receive transmissions from the unified field of awareness that underlies all apparent separation. Perhaps what they dismiss as coincidence is the universe's way of remaining anonymous while it arranges meetings between souls who need each other, delivers messages to those who are ready to receive them, and gently guides the willing toward their own becoming. Your pain is the soft hand that shapes your awakening. You would not notice synchronicities if you were still asleep to the deeper currents of existence. The fact that you see them, that you feel them like recognition rather than surprise, like reunion rather than discovery, means something in you has already shifted. Some seal has been broken. Some door has been opened. You have begun to remember what you knew before the world taught you to forget, before you learned to trust only what you could touch and measure and prove, before you traded wonder for certainty and mystery for control, before you agreed to live in a universe of separate objects colliding randomly in empty space rather than a living tapestry of infinite connection and intelligence. The synchronicities are not new. They have always been there, woven into every moment, every breath, every encounter, every choice. What is new is your capacity to perceive them, your willingness to admit that you live in a reality far stranger and more beautiful than you were told, your courage to trust what your deeper knowing has been whispering all along. And here is where the teaching deepens, where it asks more of you than comfortable belief. Synchronicities do not happen to you. They happen through you. You are not a passive receiver of cosmic winks and nods, not a lucky recipient of divine breadcrumbs scattered along your path. You are a co-creator, an active participant in the sacred dance between consciousness and manifestation, between the invisible and the visible, between what is and what is becoming. When you set an intention, when you ask a question, when you open yourself to guidance, you are not shouting into a void hoping someone somewhere might hear. You are tuning yourself to a specific frequency, aligning yourself with a particular quality of awareness and the universe, being utterly and completely responsive in ways that would terrify you if you fully understood, begins to broadcast on that frequency. The synchronicities that follow are not answers sent from somewhere else, delivered by angelic postal workers or cosmic couriers. They are your own consciousness, operating at levels beyond your ordinary awareness, arranging matter and moment and meaning in ways that communicate what you need to know. This is the secret the mystics have always known, the truth they tried to point toward with their paradoxes and poems. The boundary between self and world is a fiction. What you call reality is a collaborative creation, a conversation between awareness and possibility, and synchronicities are the visible evidence of that collaboration. The soul grows where the world believes you are breaking. When you were young, before the world trained you out of your knowing, you lived in constant synchronicity. You saw faces in the clouds and believed they were messages. You found meaning in the flight of birds and the patterns of rain. You knew without being told when someone you loved was thinking of you. You could feel the mood of a room before you entered it. You trusted your dreams and your hunches and the strange pull you felt toward certain places or people or paths. And then the world taught you better. It taught you that these were childish things, fantasies to be outgrown, superstitions that belong to a less enlightened age. It taught you to be reasonable, practical, grounded in what can be proven and repeated and controlled. And so you learned to ignore the whispers, to dismiss the signs, to explain away every synchronicity as if explanation could erase the feeling it left in your chest, that quickening, that sense of being seen by something vast and loving and impossibly attentive. But the soul cannot be trained out of its knowing. It can only be buried. And synchronicities are the soul's way of digging itself back out, of breaking through the concrete of certainty you poured over it, of reaching up toward the light like a seed that refuses to stay dormant no matter how deep you plant it. Every synchronicity you notice is your soul saying, I am still here, I still see, I still know, I am still connected to the living web of meaning that you tried to convince me was dead. And the more you notice, the more appears. Not because you are creating synchronicities through the power of positive thinking or manifestation techniques or any other attempt to control the uncontrollable, but because you are finally paying attention. You are finally looking with the eyes the world tried to close. You are finally trusting the language your soul has been speaking all along. What you call fear is the shadow of the truth trying to reach you. You fear synchronicities because they challenge everything you were taught about how reality works. Every assumption you built your sense of safety upon. They suggest that consciousness is not confined to your skull, that intention has power beyond the mechanical, that meaning is not imposed by humans onto an indifferent universe, but inherent in the very fabric of existence. And if this is true, if the universe is indeed responsive to your inner state, to your questions and longings and unspoken prayers, then you can no longer blame circumstance for your life. You can no longer hide behind the fiction that you are a victim of random forces, a piece of flotsam carried by currents you cannot influence. You must accept the terrifying freedom of being a creator, a shaper, a force that matters in ways you cannot fully measure or control. This is why so many people explain away their synchronicities or stop noticing them altogether. It is safer to live in a dead universe than to accept the responsibility of living in one that listens, that responds, that mirrors back to you the quality of your own consciousness. And then you understand that what you feared was never your enemy. It was the doorway asking to be opened. The synchronicities were never meant to prove anything or give you supernatural powers or make you special in a way that separates you from others. They were meant to wake you up to what has always been true, that you live in a participatory cosmos, an ensouled reality, a universe that is not a machine grinding through predetermined motions, but a mind knowing itself, not a collection of separate objects, but a web of relationships so intricate that every movement sends ripples through the whole. And you are not separate from this web. You are a knot in it, a place where infinite threads converge, a point of awareness through which the whole can know itself and experience itself and love itself. When you see a synchronicity, you are witnessing the universe recognizing itself through you, speaking to itself through the language of meaningful coincidence, reminding itself that everything is connected, that nothing is random, that love and intelligence move through all things whether you believe in them or not. You do not walk toward meaning. Meaning walks toward you when you become still. This is the teaching that changes everything, the key that unlocks the door you have been pushing against. You have been taught that you must search for purpose, strive for significance, earn your place in the cosmic story through achievement and accumulation and relentless doing. But synchronicities reveal a different truth, one that your ancestors knew but which was forgotten in the noise of modernity. They show you that meaning is not something you achieve, but something you align with. When you stop forcing, stop performing, stop trying to make life happen through sheer will and endless effort, something shifts. The ground beneath your feet becomes solid in a new way. You drop into a deeper current, one that was carrying you all along, but which you could not feel because you were thrashing so hard against it. You begin to move with the grain of existence rather than against it. And in that state of receptive presence, of active stillness, synchronicities multiply. Not because the universe suddenly decides to favor you, not because you have unlocked some secret formula, but because you have finally become still enough to notice what was always there. The signs, the symbols, the sacred coincidences have been speaking to you since the day you were born. You were just too busy running, too busy proving, too busy trying to force meaning into being to hear them. There is a way of living that invites synchronicity the way a flower invites the bee, the way the ocean invites the moon, the way silence invites sound. It is not a technique or a practice or a set of rules you can follow to guarantee results. It is a posture of the soul, a quality of attention, a willingness to be in relationship with mystery. It begins with paying attention, but not the aggressive attention of someone trying to control or understand or figure out the puzzle. The soft attention of someone willing to be surprised, to be taught, to be led. You notice what catches your eye for no reason you can name. You listen to what makes your heart quicken, even when your mind cannot explain why. You follow the thread of your curiosity without demanding to know where it leads or what it will bring you. You stop dismissing the subtle, the strange, the seemingly irrelevant. You allow yourself to be curious about why that name keeps appearing in your awareness, why you keep thinking about that place you have never visited, why this particular moment feels somehow significant even though nothing obviously important has occurred. This is how you begin to speak the language of synchronicity, not by analyzing it or trying to decode it like an encrypted message, but by living in dialogue with it, by treating it as a conversation rather than a code, by responding to it the way you would respond to a friend who speaks softly and waits to be heard. You say yes to the small nudges. You take the detour that makes no sense. You reach out to the person who comes to mind for no reason. You pick up the book that falls off the shelf. You accept the invitation that arrives at an impossible moment. And as you do this, as you make space for mystery and learn to trust the intelligence of your own noticing, you will discover something remarkable. The synchronicities become more frequent, more precise, more unmistakable. They begin to arrive in clusters, in cascades, in patterns so intricate that you cannot possibly dismiss them as random, not because you are manifesting them or attracting them or doing anything to make them happen, but because you are finally awake enough to participate in the conversation that has been unfolding around you all along. The universe does not speak louder to those who demand certainty or proof or logical validation. It speaks more clearly to those who are willing to listen, who can hold meaning lightly without crushing it with interpretation, who understand that some truths can only be known through lived experience rather than logical proof. You will never convince a skeptic that synchronicities are real, and you should not try. This is not knowledge that can be transferred through argument or evidence. It is knowledge that must be lived into, felt into, experienced in the marrow of your being. But you do not need anyone else to believe. You only need to live as though the universe is alive, responsive, and deeply invested in your becoming. And then watch what happens. Watch how reality begins to rearrange itself around your willingness to see. Watch how the path opens beneath your feet when you finally trust that there is a path. Watch how guidance comes in, forms you never expected but always recognize when they arrive. Every synchronicity you have experienced has arrived at exactly the moment you needed it, even if you did not recognize the need at the time. The book that fell off the shelf when you were drowning in confusion, when the question you were carrying felt too heavy to bear alone. The stranger who spoke the words you needed to hear when you were ready to give up on yourself, ready to close the door on the dreams that scared you. The phone call that came through in the space between one breath and the next, just as you were asking the universe for a sign that you were not crazy, that you were not alone, that someone somewhere understood. These were not accidents. They were appointments. They were the cosmos saying, I see you, I am with you, keep going. And if you look back at your life with honest eyes, if you allow yourself to see the pattern that your fear has kept hidden, you will see that the synchronicities were never random. They formed a constellation. They marked a path. They were breadcrumbs leading you deeper into your own truth. closer to the life that was always meant to find you, the one you stopped believing in when belief became too painful. There is a grief in synchronicity that no one speaks of. A bittersweet ache that comes from recognizing how long you have been guided, how long you have been held, how long the universe has been trying to get your attention while you were convinced you were alone. All those years you thought you were wandering lost, you were being led. All those moments you thought were random, they were woven into a pattern you could not yet see. All those people who crossed your path at exactly the right time, they were sent. Or perhaps not sent, but drawn, called, magnetized by the same mysterious intelligence that breathes life into seeds and turns planets in their orbits and knows exactly when the fruit is ready to fall from the tree. And the grief comes from understanding how much you missed, how many signs you walked past because you were taught not to see, how many messages you ignored because you were told they were not real. But underneath the grief is something else. A relief so profound it feels like coming home after a lifetime of exile. Because if you have always been guided, if synchronicity has always been operating in your life, whether you noticed it or not, then you have never been alone. Not for a single moment. Not in your darkest hour. Not when you thought the universe had abandoned you. Not when you believed your prayers went unheard. Your pain is the soft hand that shapes your awakening. And your awakening is the universe recognizing itself through your eyes. Every struggle you have endured has prepared you to receive this knowing. Every moment you felt lost has deepened your capacity to be found. Every time you questioned whether your life mattered, whether you mattered, you were being prepared to understand that you are not just a person having spiritual experiences. You are spirit having a human experience, and the synchronicities are the way spirit remembers itself through the forgetting that human life requires. You came here to forget so you could remember. You came here to lose yourself so you could find yourself. You came here to feel separate so you could discover that separation is impossible, that you are woven into everything, that every leaf that falls and every star that burns and every heart that breaks is connected to you through invisible threads of meaning and purpose. This is the only teaching you need about synchronicities, and it is not really a teaching at all, but a remembering, not a method, not an explanation, not a set of interpretations that will make sense of every strange occurrence. Simply this: you are not an accident in a random universe. You are a beloved question the cosmos asks itself, and synchronicities are the way it whispers the answer. Every meaningful coincidence is an invitation to remember that you belong here, that your life matters in ways you cannot measure, that there is an intelligence woven through existence that knows you by name and has been calling to you since before you were born, and will continue calling long after this body returns to the earth from which it came. You can ignore this invitation, you can explain it away, dismiss it as wishful thinking, return to the safety of a world where nothing means more than what you can measure and control and predict. Or you can accept it. You can say yes to a universe that sees you, speaks to you, and arranges itself in small miracles to remind you that you have never been alone and never will be. The dawn waits for no one, but welcomes all who rise. Every synchronicity is a sunrise, breaking open the darkness of separation and showing you that you live in a world more magical than your fear would allow, more responsive than your doubt would permit, more loving than your wounds could let you believe. And the question is not whether synchronicities are real. The question is whether you are awake enough to let them change you, to let them soften your certainty and deepen your wonder, to let them lead you back to the truth you have always known but learned to mistrust. That you are held, that you are guided, that you are loved by a universe that speaks in the poetry of perfect timing and impossible meetings and signs that arrive exactly when you need them most. If this spoke to your spirit, write in the comments, "I am awakening now."